Welcome to Joey's Social Club. I'm Joey Seifert. And I have two special guests today. I'd like to welcome James Forni, Director of Deadly Associates, and Adam Rockoff, Executive Producer of Deadly Associates. Thanks for coming on, guys.
You.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having us.
Wanted to give everybody, just a little background. I don't think everybody realizes what it takes, and you guys both have extensive careers, and whoever wants to start can go into that. But just a little background on the industry of how difficult it is to get sometimes projects like this done and brought to the market. So whoever, I don't know, Jim, you want to jump in first on that?
Yeah, I can jump in. I'm going to flip it right over to Adam because he knows, he's a veteran. But we Adam and I have worked together on a number of different projects in development, and we were excited to work with you, Joe, and your family to bring your family story to life, and we'll get into that. But it's on the one hand, it's the some people call it the platinum era of content because there's so many people out there streaming and creating content. But just as there are that many channels, there's also a huge amount of competition, and we're talking about decades of people who have sharpened their saw to be ready to create content, and they're all out there pitching. And so every time that Adam and I develop a concept together, we know we're going into a review with producers and network executives that are seeing just a deluge of ideas. So yeah, to get through and to win means you really have something special just to even have the opportunity to do it. But anyway, Adam, if you want to echo on that.
I mean, there's not much I can add to that, just that the cable, or I should say the television, and by television I include cable and I include all the streaming services, documentary landscape. The good thing about it in recent years is that there are a whole host of new options to showcase product, and that's just a direct result of streaming, all the different platforms. The drawback to that is that, as Jim touched upon, is that there are so many companies out there now, and so many individuals, by the way, that have and that can create great content. So as talented as you might think you are, as great a story and as great a project as you might think you have, you are constantly fighting and clawing to get it in front of the right people and then making it happen. So, I mean, one of the, I guess, the benefits of working in the documentary film business nowadays is that the cost of creation has come down astronomically. Anybody can buy a consumer grade camera. There's almost no such thing as film stock anymore because everything is digital and it's on a hard drive. I mean, when I started, you would spend thousands of dollars on tape. I mean, literally, VHS, beta, tape stock. Now that's, not even a line item anymore. But the obvious drawback to that is that, again, anybody can do it. You have, somebody's grandmother can pick up a camera, and granted, the quality probably isn't going to be there, but there's so much content out there that it's tough for anybody, viewers to TV executives, to wade through it and find those, few special projects that they want to get behind.
So these executives, they're really, because I know that you guys, I know you took our project and it was in front of so many people, and half of the time you don't even want to say that it's going in front of somebody because you're just not sure, because you get one bite and it feels like, oh yeah, it's actually going to happen, and then you get turned down, and then you get turned down 10 more times, and then 20 more times, and it gets to be definitely frustrating. That I know Jim and I have seen that, but we've seen it with a couple other people that we've talked to and other stories that have come in. We're like, my God, these are amazing stories. Like this is a $1 million story, and you can't get somebody to look at it.
Right.
And that gets like very frustrating in this industry.
What you just said is 100% true. It is frustrating. It's disheartening. But just I'm going to give sort of the network executives a little bit of credit, or not badmouth them here
Mhm.
by saying, why aren't you guys looking at them? To put yourself in their position, they are literally a couple people at a network sitting behind their desk, and they are getting a deluge of submissions. And I think we as producers forget sometimes it's not as if they're just sitting there waiting for submissions from Joe and Jim and Adam. I mean, all you have to do is go to one of these TV cable conventions and just look at the number of companies there. There aren't
Mhm.
hundreds, there are thousands.
Right.
And every one of those companies, has a staff of people constantly looking for ideas and constantly pitching to these networks. So just the fact that, and I'm not trying to make, us or anybody feel better, but just the fact that these people are talking to you and entertaining your idea really does mean you're doing something right.
Yeah.
Right. I think also I'm going to put a nuance on that too, which is that the streaming business, people think, oh, it's all this new technology, you can distribute content everywhere. I mean, sure, you can pay to put your stuff out on Tubi or Amazon or any, and I'm not lobbying for any one channel over another. But here's one thing: some of the old model is still, that behavior is still ingrained in executives today. When I say that old behavior, which is they look for proven producers, proven models. And so the same people who were at the top of the old game when you were distributing it only through a theater or distributing on the old networks are the same people producing a lot of the great content that's out there right now. Just go look at the Oscars, right? I mean, yeah, okay, so it's a film that was released on Apple or a film that was released on Netflix. It's made by the same kind of people that were making films before. And so there is this one upper echelon that's going to get content made no matter what. And then there's another echelon, which is experienced people. And this is, I'm going to give Adam props here, which is Adam has had a track record as
Mhm.
a network producer, producing shows that have been successful, producing series that have been successful. And that means something to an executive before you even look at, like, people think like, oh, it's how great the story is. You could have the best story in the world,
Yeah.
and if you don't have a producer or a showrunner who has experience, that story is not going to be worth anything to the executive because they want it to be attached to somebody experienced. Conversely, you could have a great producer and have a mediocre story, and you have a better shot at getting it done. In our case, we had both with you, Joe. We had a great story, and we had a great producer, and Adam, who had seasoning and that could get an audience, for it, and eventually got it sold.
And I'm going to return the compliment, not just to be nice, but because it's absolutely true. Yes, I had a relationship with Reels. However, I'd never worked with them before. But, forget about my history and my track record. Once I showed them the samples of what Jim and his team can do in terms of physical production, they were sold. I mean, they knew. They were sold on me. They know my background. They know what I can accomplish. They were sold on the story. Once we gave them the story and they recognized how great it was, great. But then they needed the team. And for that, because they weren't familiar with Jim, we had to show them some of the stuff that he did. And they were blown away. I mean, I'll give you just a really quick example. Some of the animation that Jim and his team were able to accomplish, we put it in the pitch just to whet their appetite a little bit. But because they thought it was incredible. And they said, you know what? We love this animation. Let's put it into the show. I mean, and that's almost unheard of for a network exec to take a look at a pitch and decide to sort of take some of that stuff that you used to sell the project and actually put it into the show itself. But that was a testament to what Jim and his team were able to accomplish to make Reels comfortable with the quality of the production that they were going to see. And not only did we, did we meet that expectation? I mean, Jim exceeded it to the nth degree.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's as you know, Joe and Adam, it is a completely group effort. No one person makes a film. I'm sure there's an exception to that statement. Somebody with an iPhone standing on the corner, something, I did it.
Yeah.
But to make something of quality in this world, you have to have specialists in each area, people who can do a lot of different things. On documentary budgets, you don't have. I'm not Ron Howard, and I don't have an army of 1,000. It's a small cadre, but we're a cadre of people that have worked together, for a decade, many of us or more together. And this company's 17 years old, and we've done thousands of short films together and television commercials. And that discipline actually contributed to what Adam just said. So a simple thing to me about, okay, we're going to show this vision through beautifully rendered storyboards that have an action to them and emotion so you can understand the story, was something I had to do as a commercial director for decades. You don't just come in and be like, what's your idea? Let me tell you. No, you got to show, here's the idea, here's the idea, here's the idea. And you better have a really well crafted board and a good story to go with the board. So to me, that was like second nature to do it that way. But then in the end, like you said, they were captivated by that. And some of that work found its way into the story and got us all inspired to do it.
So what initially, let's jump back to, I meet Matt in the weirdest way at a chiropractor's office of all places. Matt wrote the book. When he approached you originally, what drew you like to the story? I know Matt's like a little bit of a salesman, but he's kind of dry. So he's not, hey, I got this really cool story. He's not like a huge, salesman, but what initially drew you to the story to say, what, this is definitely something I want to look into?
Well, it was the first thing is, okay, anybody who's a filmmaker, storyteller, Adam and I and you all admire the great filmmakers who have made films about, the underworld, the mafia. I mean, that's been going on for decades. Okay, Coppola, Scorsese, the show, The Sopranos, etc. Those are, the very top of the heap. But there's many, many in that category. And when someone approaches you and says, oh, I have a story that ties to the Chicago outfit, but then starts to unravel it and say, this is from the victim's point of view, the survivor's point of view, the survivors who didn't take it lying down and who pursued their own path to try to somehow find revenge, redemption, justice, pick whatever word you want. And I'm not saying that those things were delivered, but the path was there. That journey to me was that was the reversal of perspective that I hadn't seen in that other kind of work. The other kind of work is, let's glorify the mob, let's glorify the underground, let's lionize these guys who kill and maim and torture. Let's make them into heroes and see what a bunch of bad boys they are and see how they live. And I'm oversimplifying because the best of them do humanize them and don't let them just be lionized. But that's the tendency. And this story automatically, before we even started, had that human interest. And he hadn't even written, I don't know how much he had written at the point when I first met Matt.
Yeah, not much.
I don't even remember looking at text. He sat me down at a lunch in the Loop someplace, and I came with he still remembers this. I don't remember it, but I guess I had my reel on my phone, which doesn't sound like very much, but it was 2007. So, I made sure I always had some representation of my work. And I said, here's a documentary I did. And, I was showing him how, some techniques and discussing it, and said, this sounds fascinating. And this was before the trial, or it wasn't completely before, but your time in the trial and before the sentencing. So then it was the chance to get to meet you and discuss how we're going to tell the story together. Do you remember when we first met? Do you remember where we went?
No, I was like, while you were talking about it, I'm trying to think back, like, oh, when was the first time that we actually met?
Because I think all of us, including Adam, we all met within, let's say, a year's period of time. But I remember, I can't say the name of the place, but and it's definitely gone. It was a restaurant, and I think it was on Clybourne. And I could probably drive to it, but I can't tell you what the name of it was. But all I remember was Matt saying, "Now listen, Joe's got some quirks. He's gonna want to sit in the back, where he can keep an eye on things." And I'm like, "For real?" And it's like, "Yeah." So then I'm worried. I'm like, "Well, what am I supposed to do if he's got his back to the wall? Where do I sit?" So, and he's like, no, it's not like that. I'm like, what? Anyway, but I remember sitting down to meet with you. And then now I'm really intrigued because, he told me the story of you as a four-year-old, and now I'm meeting you in your 40s at that time, I believe. If my math is right.
Yeah, probably somewhere around there.
And you know, already there's this juxtaposition, like how much time has already passed, and that was 15 years ago.
Yeah,
know?
that's right. When we were getting, because I remember Matt came a couple of times to the trial, and then you guys obviously came and shot. We were able to get you guys in with cameras
Right
downstairs, you know, not upstairs.
downstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, it was right at that trial time beginning.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that also got me started on the idea of the drawing, because I remember them saying, like, you can't bring a phone into the federal courthouse in Northern Illinois. I don't think many courthouses don't allow you to have phones or cameras. And they said, but you can bring like a pen and a pad and paper.
Right.
And I sat in there, because we were in there for a long time. I sat in the back. You were up front with your family in the proceedings, and I just drew as much as I could. Not because I'm a draftsman. I don't draw all the time. I draw to like express an idea. I draw fast, you know, to get a scene. But I just kept drawing it because I'm like, oh, how am I going to remember this? And that's where one of the first drawings came from, of you presenting, you know, at the sentencing of Joey the Clown Lombardo. That was such a moving moment with you and your brother, and you know, made quite an impression. And then the other side of it, I guess, just to tell the viewers, is that Chicago Magazine had wanted to do an article with you, and we got retained to do the photography for that. And we said, well, we'll do photography and B-roll in the courthouse. And that I leapt at that, because I knew that everybody would want to have their own story of you for the newscast that night. And I knew we weren't working for that. Even on that day, I knew that someday Adam and I and you would work together and create a thing. I'm stepping back to see the scene that you're part of, not being in the scene. Yeah. And that was valuable, because you could see how big the story was by stepping outside of it and not being this close to it. So it was magnetic, I think, right from the beginning.
So how many years did it go by until it was able to be presented to Adam, where Adam comes into the picture then?
Well, Adam and I, we first had a discussion. Now, here's something else too. We did meet early on. It didn't have the name Deadly Associates at the time, because Matt hadn't written the book.
Right.
Called it Family Secrets, I think, for lack of a better term. And we met you in like Buffalo Grove someplace. I think it was like a coffee house or something. Where
we met at Starbucks in Deerfield.
Oh, Deerfield. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Of
but
course,
we met there. Yeah. And your mom came to that meeting, didn't she?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, did she? God, I don't remember that.
So we put up like a shopping agreement together with Adam. Of course, he had explained to me what that was at the time, and we discussed like, okay, let's figure out a way we can pitch. But we had nothing, right? We didn't even have the magazine article hadn't come out. We had like a couple of paragraphs to describe it. We shot an interview with John Drummond afterwards, and we did shoot an interview with you and Nick, but it wasn't a lot. We didn't have a lot to go with.
Yeah, we didn't have a ton, but John Drummond was always, I mean, he was the hook, you know, he's so powerful.
I think that's why, for me, he had to be the first interview, which he was for the whole series. When we started it, I'm like, John's got to be the first one. Plus, we wanted to make sure he was going to be there for us. So, yeah, it was important.
Be there. He's going to outlast the three of us.
He probably is.
Yeah,
he probably
there's no question about that.
No, yes.
So, Adam, at that point,
he kicked my rib, on that interview.
At that point, Adam, you get this dropped in your lap, and you start, you know, digging into it. Where do you like go with that right away? Like, once you get a story that there's no treatment, there's no book, it's literally just a conversation, pretty much.
What I did, and this is going back over 10 years, so I might be misremembering some of it, but the only reason I got involved at all was because it was such a good story. And I probably told you guys this. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it wouldn't have been anything where I would have, you know, Joe, I didn't know you from Adam, no pun intended, and Jim, I wouldn't have done it as a favor. If it was not a good story, I wouldn't have brought it to anybody. I had to be confident in the quality of the story and the access that we had. And I was, obviously. I don't remember specifics of who I shared it with, But what I did is I reached out to the people who I knew at cable networks, and I said to them, probably in only a couple sentences, I said, guys, I came across this great story about the Chicago mob and the family at the core of it who ended up bringing them down. There's all the elements of a fantastic documentary. Let's do it. And they didn't. Why they decided not to do it, I have no idea. It certainly wasn't the quality of the story. Because I've been in this business long enough to know what a good story is, and
Yeah.
this had all the elements. But whether they didn't like me, they weren't confident, in Jim, who knows? But or maybe they just had a million other things that they wanted to do instead. But we didn't manage to get it off the ground. And then after probably, I don't know, a few weeks, maybe a few months of not being able to generate any momentum, I probably just moved on to other things. But I never forgot about it. I mean, it was always, I wasn't actively doing something, but if Jim ever came back to me and said, do you remember this project? My response would have always been, of course I remember. It's one of the best stories I ever heard.
Yeah.
I know things changed a little bit once the book actually got written.
Mhm.
I think that helped a little bit, that people were able, it was something tangible that they could dig into and read and, kind of follow and see where the story goes. But even then, we've talked on here with other people, and I've talked how it was on the table at Tribeca with I Heard You Paint Houses literally at the same time.
Yeah.
But it was
That's an
just one of
interesting
those.
story.
It is. If you want to tell it, I think it's a great story
Yeah.
because it was very interesting to me. I was like, wow, like even just to be on the table, like if it doesn't get picked up, it doesn't get picked up, but that it made it to that table and they were interested in it, that said a lot to us.
It did. I had an in at Tribeca Pictures, which is Robert De Niro's company, and there's just a bunch of producers there. And I leveraged that connection. I went and presented to them. And at that time, the book was in development form. It wasn't, it was like manuscript, like a handwritten manuscript. It wasn't like a public book like you have behind you. And they, they were definitely intrigued, and they did say, listen, we just made this commitment to They Paint Houses, Don't They? Which became
The Irishman.
Right, right. And I remember specifically this producer, who will remain nameless, saying like, it's going to be the last thing that Pacino and De Niro do together. He was saying like, it's going to be the last one. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not here to like, okay, get them on board. We just want to see if it's something that you guys want to do.
Yeah.
But thank you, and I did remember so the first question that any good producer asks you, and Adam, I'm sure you can back this up. I mean, they probably know you well enough that they don't ask you this question anymore, but they're like, do you have the rights to do this story? That's the very first question.
Yeah.
Of course. You have the rights to this story.
Yeah, because if not, there's no point in having the conversation.
They end it right there.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, he asked me, he said, okay, if you were doing a fiction version of this, like who would be your cast? Who would be your top
that's where
three?
we had fun with it. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I remember we were saying Javier Bardem at that point.
Here.
Yeah. Yeah, it was in No Country for Old Men.
Right.
And we're like, he would be the perfect Joey the Clown.
He was-
Charlize Theron was going to play your mom.
Yeah.
We had it all knocked out. But they sent it over to William Morris Endeavor. I think it might have just been William Morris then. Was their agent, and they said, we're going to have to send this over for coverage. It's a process, and I do have a rejection letter somewhere that says, we took this other project. But he was adamant about one thing, that you need to get this book done and you need to get it released. The manuscript wasn't enough. And it was a strong book. Obviously, Matt really poured everything he had into it to not just write the history, but to package it like a film, to package the story with, the trauma at the beginning and take you through the story. He had a filmic arc to the story, but had the nonfiction chops, the journalistic chops to go through and make sure that everything was well researched and understandable. It's not a huge book. I mean, what is it?
No,
in terms of pages, right?
It's not a big book, and everybody says it's a very easy read.
Yeah.
And I've literally never had anybody say anything negative about it, like, oh, it was kind of slow or it was this or that. My aunt, who lived through all of this with my mom and the rest of us. I mean, like day to day with my mom, lived through this. She was Judy. She was the first one that my mom called when it all happened. She took the book home, and I saw her. I ended up seeing her like a couple of days later, and I said, "So did you start the book?" And she looked at me. She goes, "What do you mean start it?" She goes, "I took it home and I read the entire book straight through that night. It's a great book." And she lived it. Like I was like really taken back with that. So, I mean, you know, it was frustrating that it took so long to get it done. But I mean, he just did it. He just did a great job. I mean, he just really did.
He did it, yeah, from the heart and his own dedication to the project, as we all did in the beginning, right? There was nobody writing any of us checks in the beginning. We just did it because we loved the story and we wanted to find a way to get it out. And we knew that we were all going to have to put in sweat equity and more to get the story in front of the right people to review it. And
that was the first book that Matt ever wrote.
Right.
I mean, he was never published or anything before that.
Right. And that takes us to now we're at 2016, 2017. And then in 2018, I was a finalist at the Chicago Film Festival in documentary for it's like a pitch fest. It doesn't mean I didn't have a film there. I had a pitch film there, and there were 5 filmmakers that got to present in front of the audience and judges and people from Cartemp and so forth. And at that time I was pitching the story of so we have a documentary about a Holocaust survivor who became a rock and fashion photographer. He had a really interesting story. So I pitched it. I had my 2-minute pitch, I had my visuals, and then, get judged and so forth. Anyway, at that pitch, I met Elaine Wider-Harshman, who was legal counsel. And at that point I was, considering some other options, and she and I had a very good connection out of the film festival. And I told her about this project. And then, then the wheel started. Actually, that was just the beginning of that one gear, like the 2 pieces of the gear come together and move forward. And that was the first like tiny squeak forward, which was, we'll get the options on the book. Then we, she explained, we put the life story rights together with you and your brother and your mother and with Matt, the writer. And then I started to put out these storyboards together. And then simultaneous to that, I contacted Adam. I said, I'm putting this whole package together. And that's when he started advising me on those materials in order to get it presented to the network. So that's just the ramp up to the starting line.
Yeah.
10 years to get to the starting line.
Now those storyboards, that was a super interesting story. I remember too, because you guys were in Paris at that time, right?
Yep.
And you ended up running into who?
So I was studying in the master's program at International School of Film and Media called ACAR, and as one of the extensions of that, I studied with some of the best, one of the best storyboard artists in the world, and he had done work for many major features, and he took a real interest in this story. And so he started, looking at the elements of it and giving me art direction and some initial sketch ideas. I'll give you an example. He did, the film Gravity with Sandra Bullock, where she's like floating around in space. That film had 2,500 storyboards or something like that. I mean, because they had to shoot like every angle, upside down and everything. So he's done a lot of crazy stuff like that, and he did. Cold Mountain, and he's just 100 films. Anyway, he loved it, and he started to do some of the initial sketches, and he was said I would be happy, he'd be honored to work in this project. The challenge was he's a fiction film guy, right? Cold Mountain, so he's the kind of guy who commands so much money. He's not even just a storyboard artist. He's like the director's previs, producer. He would do fight sequences. We was telling like how we would work out. He would not just draw it, and then he'd get in there with the director and the actor and show them how to get through this fight sequence. So he had a lot of skill, and he's like, if and when you guys want to go to the fiction film, I could do, my hundreds of stuff. But he gave us the initial art direction of how to do it. And then when I came back to Chicago after 2 years in France, I met with someone who we took the translation of that art direction and started to build out the boards. It's crazy.
Yeah.
A lot of hands.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, like what it really takes to get it done. So then at that point, we're still climbing the ladder, and Adam, you and Alex are still back in getting updates and working with Jim on everything. And where do you finally get to the point where you say, I think it's ready enough to take to blah, blah, blah?
So I had been talking to Reels, I don't know for how long, about a documentary on Ghislaine Maxwell. And this was before anybody knew the name, before anybody knew who Epstein was. I had signed up and was working with Ghislaine's good friend and her, ex-good friend. And the ex-good friend said, I have this bombshell story, nobody's going to believe it. And quite frankly, I didn't believe it when I heard it. And we brought it to Reels, and they were interested. And then literally, I would say, right before they pulled the trigger, the Epstein story blew up, and everybody and their mother had an Epstein documentary. And Reels just said, we can't, we're not going to be able to break through the fray. But it was great talking to you. It was great working with you on this. Do you have anything else? And I remember this distinctly because this is an example of, as good as the book is, Jim, I didn't send them the book. What I sent them was the treatment that your team put together, and that sold them on it. In fact, so let me back up a little bit. Real said to me, Adam, we want to work with you, or we'd be happy to work with you. What else do you have? And I pitched them two ideas. The first one was the one that I thought actually had more of a chance of going forward because of the nature of it. I thought it was a bit more fun and quirky, and it was about the satanic panic of the 1980s. When everybody and their mother thought that, horror movies and heavy metal were signaling the downfall of society. And because of my background in horror movies and to a lesser extent heavy metal, I was going to bring some sort of well-known people in that community to be a part of it. And Reels, what they're known for is they are a celebrity-driven network. That's their bread and butter. Shows about celebrities, alive and a lot of times dead, quite frankly. Their autopsy show is very popular. So that was the first thing I pitched them. And then the second thing was the Deadly Associates idea. And I probably said to them, you know what? I'm only pitching this to you. I know it doesn't have the star power, even though it's a very well-known Chicago story, but it's not like, it's the murder of, a famous Hollywood celebrity, but right. I am pitching it because it's such a good story. And lo and behold, I sent to them when they got back to me, they said, yeah, we do love one of these stories. It's not your silly satanic panic idea. It is the Deadly Associate story. We're really interested in that. And again, what sold it was really, was the treatment, with the animation, that Jim and his team put together. I have to give credit to Reels in this regard, that they recognized immediately what a good story it was and what was special about it and why it was not just a typical mob story. And there's nothing wrong with that. People love mob stories. People love the traditional mob stories, but this was different. And they realized that from the get-go.
Yeah, that's great. And then I remember, I think, Jim, you gave the call. It was New Year's Eve night.
Was it New Year's Eve night? God,
yeah.
I forgot okay.
It was both of our, you guys got married on New Year's Eve, and my wife and I got married on New Year's Eve. So, all excited to celebrate and everything. And then, you get the call that it's been green. It's a green light.
Yeah. Yeah. And Alex called me up, and they, we had a whole conversation about, the fact that there's been from one of the executive producers there that we have what's called a soft green light. Hard green light is the contract, but that means the project's going to go forward. And I remember that call was around the holidays. I guess I must have waited till New Year's Eve to call you. I guess dramatic timing. And and then I said, that was 19 turning to 20, right? It was 29,
right at COVID. Yeah.
Right. And of course we didn't know that. And we're like, okay, we're gonna start working on this, and then
it was like a month or two later, and COVID hit and shut everything down.
Yeah. it was a long pause.
Yeah.
Right. So really, even though we thought we were at the starting line, we weren't until 14 months later, because we still had to go through the process to get it from a soft to a hard, green light. You got to go through legal and all that. And Adam had a ton of experience with network contracts and how to work with a network. So what things we could, try to retain, what things we could, pursue. So, I mean, obviously, like, one of the major things is we wanted to make sure that we would always have the fiction rights for you, so that we can go forward and create an episodic series. To all you network executives who are watching right now, we are wanting to pursue that, and so that was.
I don't want to pretend to speak for reals, but I have to imagine, if I'm putting myself in their position right now, nothing would make them happier than for somebody at some movie company to see this documentary, even hear about it, and want to do that. I don't want to call it the fiction version. It's not the fiction version. It's just the feature version, the narrative version, because I mean, what that will do is that'll just bring more attention back to their network and to their documentary. So, I mean, I think that's a win-win for everybody. And I don't want to say that was one of the deciding factors that made them want to do this story, but the fact that it could have legs in another capacity had to be appealing to them. I just want to tell one really quick story about during the negotiations about this, and me trying to convince them, even though that they knew this was a great story and they loved it from the get-go, there were still questions that they asked me and things that I had to answer. And I remember one of the things that was I was relieved to have it, and I know they were happy to hear it, was the amount of archive material that we had, meaning that Joe had. Because if there was no Joe, or I should say, if Joe wasn't a producer, wasn't working closely with us, what we would have to do is we would have had to license all the footage for the documentary from footage houses, from TV networks, and other sources. And I think one of the things that people who aren't in the industry might be unaware of or have a misconception about is the price of archive material. I mean, a single photo, to be able to use that in a documentary, depending who owns it, could be hundreds, if not thousands and more. But we had, and I knew we had because I had seen it and because Joe told me, we had a treasure trove of family photos, and all of those photos that you see in the documentary. In a little bit, we have some footage too, actually, of Danny. That all came from the Seaford family. And to have that, and knowing you have that at the beginning, that's a huge selling point too, because a network is not going to give you, any money at all to do a documentary if you can't prove to them that you have the visuals to tell the story. Because recreations are great, interviews are great, they're both necessary, but what they really ask for, they didn't ask, can you get the interviews? They didn't ask, can you do the recreations? They said, do you have the archival footage that'll bring people into the story? And I could tell them, unequivocally, we do, and it's fantastic.
But even proving that was a kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it was.
I had multiple conversations with Elaine. She's like, okay, well, these are your pictures. Well, obviously that's me in the picture,
Right.
Well, who owns I forget what she called it. Who owns the rights to that picture?
The provenance.
I'm like, Elaine, what the hell are you talking about? What do you mean? Who owns it? We do. It's me. She's like, no, who took the picture? How did you get it? I'm like, I got it from my mom, and my mom got it from my aunt. Oh, well, we'll have to have your aunt sign a release. I'm like, that's going to be kind of tough. She's been dead for 20 years. And then you're getting into the conversation of, well, you might not be able to use it. I'm like, what? It was the weirdest thing that I think I had to deal with.
Rights are extremely tricky, extremely frustrating. And hearing what you just said about Elaine, that doesn't surprise me. She's a very, very thorough lawyer, which is very important in a documentary like this. And Jim, you can talk about all the details. I don't know how interesting it is, but I have to say, if people were curious about the rights and how all that kind of stuff works, just so you know, Jim and his team, every single image, every single frame of film in that documentary has to be cleared, for lack of a better word. Jim knows exactly where every frame came from and who owns the rights and how he obtained the rights. And that's, again, I'm saying Jim, but that's what any documentarian has to do, or else, they're in big trouble.
Yeah.
They could get sued. And I think I know Rios was very appreciative of how thorough Jim and his legal team were in they told us in clearing everything.
Was, yeah, that's a whole separate, part of, people think filmmaking is all the glory of, setting up the scene and lighting it and shooting it. And yeah, that is a great joy, a part of the passion. But there's this whole foundational effort of like the person that has to make the blueprint, to make the plans before you can even build anything. And then afterwards to document, yeah, we have the plans. This is the foundation over here. And this is how we did this. This is how we did that. And then all of that had to be put together into a massive binder, which I am getting delivered to this set right here. And here it is. This is the Deadly Associates binder of, endless, organized by, 10 different, statuses, releases, the script, the beautiful script that Adam wrote, that Joe spoke as, which we should get into too. But it's all in here. And, we also have a digital copy of it, but it's really cool to have the whole Bible,
which
forever.
will not be available on Amazon ever, just so everybody knows.
Ever. Yeah. Well, it could be.
Well, it could.
The price would have to be really Sotheby's would have to auction it off.
That was actually an interesting what you were just saying though too, is because when we were talking about voiceover and that whole thing, and you guys had approached me on it, I was like, what do you mean? You want me to talk over the whole thing? And it really like there were a lot of things in shooting and producing and everything that really like took me way out of my normal comfort zone, through this whole project, on top of telling the whole family story. But that was a really interesting, part to it, going down and reading in the booth and everything. But then like actually watching it on TV, I was like, it sounds kind of cool.
Well, Joe, I can tell you how that came about, and Jim can jump in, and I'm going to be completely transparent here, and you might not want to hear it. I was not one of the ones who was a proponent of that. I said, we have three fantastic characters. I said, we have Joe, Emma, and Nick. I said, to make Joe the narrator, I think it's going to be strange. I'm not a fan of this. I want to get a professional voice of God narrator, so we can separate it.
Yeah.
And we had been going back and forth with Reels about different aspects of it. And Reels suggested it, I believe.
Really?
Or Jim, maybe you suggested it, but whoever it was, the other one of you agreed right away.
Right.
I think it happened, and I still wasn't sold. But eventually when we recorded,
not because of Joe, just because of cinematic form, just to be clear for the audience, because the way
Joe had nothing to do with it. Yeah, he could have been Orson Welles or somebody off the street. Made no difference. I just didn't think somebody, and maybe this is giving people too much behind the scenes information, but they might find it fascinating. I just didn't think somebody who was intimately involved in the story as one of the three, if not the lead character, should be doing the voiceover. But I was proven wrong by how it turned out. Reels wanted Joe, Jim wanted Joe. I assume Joe wanted to do it because he did it.
At that point I was like, yeah, sure, let's just get this done. I mean, we're right at the finish line. Let's finish this thing.
But that is one of the interesting things about filmmaking. All of us did all this planning and thinking about this, and at the last minute, while we're almost done with the edit, we did a whole, maybe not a 180, but we really switched around what was a very integral part of the film, and that's the narrator. And these things can happen. It's a creative endeavor. It's not, nothing is black and white or exact in documentary films. That's for sure.
I felt it was like that way too when we were doing a lot of the recreations. Like there was a general idea, but it was like run and gun when we were actually shooting. Like you'll shoot something and be like, I don't know, let's change that, or let's do this, or let's think about that. And it's, it was just a constant process through the whole time.
Well, yeah, I definitely want to comment on that, but I will also say about the voiceover that, it's also a tribute to the way you changed the position of the perspective of the writing, Adam, which was you were able to take it from when you said voice of God. To the people that don't know what the phrase means, sounds pompous or ominous. It just means a person who has perspective over the world that they're commenting on. And so we then had to change that script, and Adam went through it. 88, 90 lines, okay, of script, not just a couple of things, and made sure that the voice of it was in first person so that it seemed like it would be natural. And then further to the point, we both, Adam and I, agreed from a producing standpoint that we would defer and collaborate with you, where if you said, okay, I might try to say it this way, or I might add a spin here, that you would offer that up. And
I
you
usually offer my opinion.
Jim,
Yes.
I remember that.
I'm making it sound like we made room for it. Yeah.
But I remember we said, and this was important because it was for the benefit of the film. When I was done writing that dialogue and you were ready to give it to Joe, I said, I don't care if Joe changes every single line. I said, you make sure you shoot what sounds right and what is best for the project. I said, this isn't the 10 Commandments. It's, it was dialogue that I liked. I was proud of it. I worked hard on it. But if it didn't sound right coming from Joe's mouth, it wasn't going to work. So Joe had the option and the opportunity, and he did make some of the lines his own. And that's why ultimately it worked out so well.
I do think it's really seamless. And I think people will probably be surprised, like, oh, this was a creative decision. It just seemed like you would have known that from day one. And that's how you have a good decision, because people think, like, how could it be any other way?
Yeah.
Now I think of it that way too. And so those decisions come. But all right, so we'll jump to the recreations. The interesting thing about doing a recreation is, unlike fiction filmmaking where actors have lines, they don't always have lines, but there's an objective in the scene. Everything in a recreation is really like, it's B-roll, it's a scene. There's no, even if we would have conversations, like we would have the conversation of your father with Lombardo, we did it, and what they call MOS, without sound. They're just pretending to have an argument. So everything is actually, in a way, it's almost more powerful than some aspects of fiction filmmaking, because you're really trying to create something spontaneous in the moment. But the detail that we committed to was period. We made sure they had the right clothing, the right time period, the right cars. You helped us with that, Joe.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult, getting picture cars from the era that, were functional and driving. And also, weapons and all the right key props. And once you put those things in the mix, it's like, okay, here's the ingredients. Now, how do we create something that feels right,
And I think all of the actors that we chose really fit. Like, they all fit really well. They all worked really well. One of the ones I think that, I was the most impressed with was the kid that played Little Joey. I mean, it was literally his first role he's ever played. And he's this little kid, and you just watch him and he's in this big world with everything going on around him. And he just was great. I mean, he just came off really good. The everybody else did really great too, but I was really impressed with him as that being his first role.
I've worked with a lot of child actors, having done, commercials for, child products for kids. And a lot of the times the kids that are trained as actors could be really difficult, or they would just break down crying on set. You'd have to sit there for 30 minutes. That
was my concern. I was going to be scared, like, these guys are busting in with guns and he's going to be standing there and, like, traumatize this poor little kid on his first shoot.
He was really able, and his parents were very supportive.
Yeah.
And then I think the ensemble of actors around him also came to play, right? They were going to make sure, in a sense, they took care of him as if it was as if their child.
Yeah.
There was a lot of detail into that, of the bicycles and the guns, and the fact also that, you had your mom's weapon from a certain period of time, which we could reference in a shot. You can see when she, picks that up, it's got a weight, it's not, it has a history in it. And
nobody accidentally got shot.
Exactly right. Yeah. Nobody accidentally got hurt.
Right.
And we're very thankful of that. And part of that is we made a conscious decision that no weapon was going to be fired except
Right.
on a firing range. And we, took all the proper precautions, thanks to you, Joe, to put that together. And there was no need to do that.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
we can, as filmmakers, we can separate the firing of a gun in one area and the acting in another, and seamlessly tell the story.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that people also need to understand or be interested to know is if you went to any recreation shoot that you put together, Jim, it did not look like a documentary recreation shoot. It looked like a feature film. The amount of people and the specialists you had there was absolutely remarkable. I've been on a lot of movie sets. When I started in this business, I worked on feature films as an intern, as a PA, getting coffee and cigarettes and gum for people. So I've seen a lot of different productions, and this looked like an indie feature film production. As documentary filmmakers, a lot of times, sometimes, if I produce them, I have to run around with the cameraman, by myself, just picking up little shots here and there. This wasn't like that. This had real actors, multiple camera people,
Yeah.
on set audio. I mean, it was run exactly like a feature film set was run. And and when you watch it, it looks like a feature film. I mean, there are some absolutely gorgeous images and sequences in the film that are not typical of documentaries, even, well-funded, renowned documentaries. I mean, that the stuff that you guys managed to pull off on set for the original footage was remarkable and beautiful.
Thank you. I will take that praise, and I hope the fans will also experience it that way and watch the hell out of it.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of just great feedback on it. I mean, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it. The question I do get, though, I don't know if you guys want to address that yet or not, is when it's going to be available again for people to watch, because that's probably the biggest question that I get right now.
Yeah, so here's what's going to happen. Reels told me this. It's not a secret. We can announce that it's going to be on Reels again on the 22nd of this month at 9 p.m. Eastern time, which is obviously 8 p.m. Central time in Chicago in the Midwest. And then it'll rerun again that same night, or actually probably the next day at 1 a.m. And again, that's Eastern time. So midnight, our time in Chicago. And then what's going to happen is, I don't have the details yet. And I know Reels probably, although they may have some idea, after it airs on Reels again, what's going to happen is it's going to be available in a couple months, a few months on demand on your cable system. So if you do get Reels, you'll be able to say, I have Xfinity, my remote, I speak into it. You can say Deadly Associates, they'll pull it up and you can watch it whenever you want. And after that, a few months later, it'll go to the online platforms, Amazon for sure, because Reels has a deal with them, but maybe other ones. And then after that, I believe it's probably going to go to some other free online platforms, which I'm not sure, but we'll reach out to Reels, we'll be in touch with them, and as soon as they know, they'll let us know, because even after the premiere, they want eyeballs as much as possible, so it's in their best interest to try to promote it.
I think that's why I was a little surprised that it was up and then they took it down right away. I didn't necessarily understand why they did that, but it's just an internal thing that they do with all their new programs, just to see.
I don't want to speak for them again, but the fact that you couldn't watch it again right away, it is in no way indicative of the quality or how happy they were with it. I know they were very, very happy with it. It's just that unlike Netflix or Hulu or something, it's not. Reels isn't a streamer. It's a network. It's a smaller network, but it's a network. Meaning, once it airs, that's great. They're very happy, but then they have hundreds of other shows that have to fill into the slots. So it's not like they have they have a ton of real estate to keep rerunning the same content. They're constantly doing new shows, and they care about all their shows. We think ours is so special and great, and it is. Of course. But they have, but everybody, there are other shows too that they have to publicize and promote. So
they know
Yeah.
we have enough footage and the gas to do a couple more shows for them. So
yeah,
we could definitely extend this. What other before I let you guys go, are you guys working on any other exciting projects that you guys can talk about right now?
Here, go first, and then I'll talk.
So, well, Joe, I think one thing we should talk about is, we started, the three of us working with the Dino story. I think that's something we should talk about. Dog
Dino Novell, sure.
Yep. And that's a really interesting story because it's, we call it Champ Con Hero. There's the arc of the story right there. He was a world champion kickboxer. He ended up getting convicted of some crimes, so he was involved in the underworld, and then he made a deal to save a judge's life, got out, and started, I think, probably one of the only documented boxing churches supported by Floyd Mayweather, among others, and has helped save hundreds of kids. So it's a really passionate, crazy story. Fits right in our wheelhouse, and we're pitching that. We're also working on a project that is in the news right now. It was in the news Thursday night with the NHL All-Star game. There's a big story that broke about abuse, sexual and physical abuse of hockey players, and that is in the news, has been in the news for the last month. And we have exclusive rights on certain survivors of that, and who are coming through and having the courage to tell a very difficult story. And we've done a 30-minute documentary of that. And right now it's called The Incubation of Silence. It's a working title, and we've also pitched that. But those are just two titles. We have literally dozens of ideas in different forms of development, different people that we've worked with, from Stevie Bullets to Mario Gatte to Frank Coconate, different people that we've talked to that have life stories that are interesting. And we are all trying to figure out ways to shape them into larger narratives and to make it a package, right? I mean, that's the thing that Adam is always advising me about and helping me to collaborate, because none of us, not a single one of us, is going to come up with just the right solution, but together we combine our skills, and that's shown that it has a strong response.
And I'll end it, or whatever Joe wants to end it. But I know he said we were wrapping up. I really do, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. And I can speak for my business partner, Alex Flaster, who's not here right now, but who was instrumental in a lot of it, especially the script writing. We keep talking about me writing the script. The truth is, I wrote the dialogue, and not even all of it, which is about 10% of it. It was Alex who really put the story together. So kudos to him. He did a fantastic job with a very tough story. But I digress. What I was going to say is, what we're all working on next, I think despite how tough this was to get it off the ground, and at the beginning, the waiting for it to happen, the actual making of this documentary, both through production and editing, this isn't to say it wasn't hard, but it went as smoothly as any production I've ever been a part of. And again, this is a testament to everybody, to Jim, your entire team, including, of course, Joe and the family. I mean, not only did everybody work extremely hard, but everybody was so giving with their time and their personal stories. And it wasn't always easy, but I think it just was a remarkable collaboration with everybody. And I think the proof is in the final product, because I've talked to many people who have seen it. Some who, might bullshit me, but some who would never, say anything except give it to me straight. And everybody loved the final film. It's an extraordinary film about an extraordinary family. It really is.
It was powerful. I mean, just from me, I was there, as you guys know, I was there every day on set. We're shooting, I'm there. And it, doing all the recreations, coming with my A game for my interview, I'm the one in front of the camera now. And once I saw the final product that was completely edited compared to, just being there every day and recreating and shooting and stuff, it was powerful. Like for me, even my mom, I mean, she was at the premiere, and she's, next to my wife. My wife's like, "Oh, wasn't it great?" and this and that. And, she's trying to get a reaction out of her. My mom's like, I can't talk right now. She's like, it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
I'm tearing up hearing that story, and I've teared up.
Yeah,
a
I did
million
too. I
times
was like,
watching,
I'm like, I'm gonna cry. I'm like, this is because it was. I mean, it was, a long life, but for her to have lived through it and to, have seen it and walked away and said that was extremely powerful. Like, she'd make fun of me. She's like, oh, you used to tell me, yeah, you're going to work again today. You're going to be in the city. Okay, well, I don't know what he's doing. And then when she saw it, she's like, oh my God, she's like, this was incredibly powerful. So I think that's like a big testimony,
It is, because there's plenty of people who participate in projects and don't have something good to say about it afterwards. This is part of and so it meant I held my breath a little bit, to use a phrase from Ed Marshall, when after we watched it together, which was to hear your mom, respond to that. It was, she needed a moment to digest it.
Absolutely.
And I was most concerned, not about people telling the stories, because there's a detachment when you have journalists, when you have federal prosecutors, when you have FBI agents, when you have people talking about her. That was moving. But when she had to watch the recreation of,
that's where I was worried. I was a little worried of the recreations
more than one time, and all the details of it. She it was gonna be the only time that she would have ever seen anything like that, other than the time when it really did happen to her.
Right.
And so we had a tremendous responsibility, all of us, to speak visually with authenticity, without necessarily glorifying the violence, but nor were we turning away from it. And so there was a really thin, line that we were, traversing to get the tone of that right. And it meant a lot to us. But you guys gave us the tools, like you said, like, oh, I remember everything just seemed to go black and white. So we're desaturating the color, we're shifting to black and white. And I saw him running through the parking lot. We go from the point of view into Danny's world. What was it like for him? We had to take advantage of what filmmaking offered us as tools to say, what could we do that's different than simply sitting back and saying, well, what do you think it looked like? We had to go to the emotional center of the story. And for that, I'm humbled and honored to have worked with you guys on it to make it happen. And I'm glad we have this article that's out in the world, this program that people can experience. And this is it, man. It's like that Wilco song. You send it out into the world. It's not yours anymore. It's not ours.
Yeah.
Literally. Probably legally too. Where's Elaine? Elaine's coming back into the conversation.
All right. Well, I appreciate both of you guys taking time out of your day. I know both of you guys are extremely busy, so I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking. I think everybody will really enjoy hearing like just a lot of the background and what went into it and how it all got put together.
It was great, and it was an honor to tell your and your family story. So thank you both for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Adam.
Jim.
Thanks, Joe. See you, man.
See ya.
Take care.
This has been another episode of Joey's Social Club. Come back next week for more hard-hitting stories from the Chicago underworld.